There we are. All right, we are live. So yeah, welcome back to Tigers SRD. This is another Rogelio free episode. He's currently in Erie doing his Prospects Live thing, watching prospects and scouting with James Chipman and Jake Bowes. And of course, they picked the one game that Riley Green is not playing.
I was going to say, I sure hope he gets a good look at Riley Green.
Yeah, no, I was, I was going to tell him like, hey, you should just, text the Erie GM and say, hey, play Riley Green. We drove 3 hours. Play him.
This
Make him go out there.
Unacceptable.
But no, good for Riley Green for getting a day off, and good for Raj for getting out there. And Chipman is doing his Magellan. He was in Lakeland. Nico Cavadas. Nico Cavadas. There you go. Geoff Pontes joins us here. Thanks, Geoff, for coming on. We were just talking about Chipman doing his Magellan impersonation, going from Lakeland to Toledo to Erie to West Michigan tomorrow. He's in all four of the main season or full season affiliates for the Tigers. But yeah, I guess I should do all the stuff that Raj normally does. Follow us on Twitter at Tigers SRD. I don't know, whatever. We could add this in later. I don't know all the housekeeping stuff that Raj does, but yeah, welcome to Tigers SRD. We got Geoff Pontes here.
I'll get a better background going here. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
I on here last second. I was like, oh crap, I have that thing.
There, is that better? I did a tri-screen. I don't know if that's if you guys see it or I see it. So
you got a beautiful view of my basement. It's gorgeous.
That's fine. It's in my basement too. I've got like this big fancy, poster from IKEA.
I call it my podcast studio, but really it's a table in my basement. But it's a nice table.
I have a sort of sports wall, but you can't really see it. There's various bobbleheads and cereals on there. But in any event, Geoff, we appreciate you coming on. I was just telling you that I didn't know that I was hosting this. I didn't realize it. I thought Raj would still be joining us. So now it's me running the show, I guess. And so we're just going to chat. I don't know if, I asked him if we were going to do our regular segments that we normally do on this show. And he said, yeah. So I don't know if you are aware of that or you could just sit out and have some fun.
Yeah, no, he told me, and I'm
there you go.
Awesome. I'm always here and ready. So yeah,
fantastic.
No sweat at all.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm excited because Geoff, I haven't met you. I'm Yoop, John, whatever you want to call me. But I see you put now Nico Cavadas there. I need you to see this. You can read it. You probably can't. I was getting ready with something about Nico Cavadas today.
Here you go.
So I'm feeling the karma rolling here.
Serendipity.
Yes.
Well, I guess the one thing, Geoff, you've never actually been on the podcast with us, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Not on this one. I'm sure you've done shows with Rogelio in some capacity. But we always ask our first-time guests about their earliest baseball memory. So I'm kind of curious to hear about yours.
Yeah,
if you have one.
Sure. So I have two that come to mind. The first I can think of is, and honestly, I was young enough that I can't remember which one was first. Mm-hmm. So the first one was getting like packs of baseball cards. My family and I, this is long before I covered the Cape Cod League or even knew what it was. We're down the Cape like on vacation, and my uncle gave me my uncle worked for like a candy and like a supplier for like convenience stores back in like the 80s, so they did baseball cards, which were obviously big at the time and everything. So it was like a pack of like 86 tops, maybe. Like, I don't even know if I got anything good, but I just remember like looking through them and like kind of like thinking about baseball. And I want to say the following season that my uncle and my father took me and my slightly older cousin, Jen, to Fenway Park for the first time. So this was 80. I want to say it was 87 or 88, and it was a prime matchup. I look back, it's crazy. It was Roger Clemens versus Brett Saberhagen, and it was like a burner. Yeah, and those Royals teams had like George Brett, Bo Jackson was on that team. Like I saw all these guys, I didn't even realize that. Then like years later, I was like, oh my god. I mean, like Saberhagen pitched for the Red Sox when I was like a teenager. So. Mm-hmm. And that was like good Brett Saberhagen versus like really good, like young, pre-steroids Roger Clemens, pre-problematic Roger Clemens. So That was cool. Lee Smith came in for the save for the Red Sox, and I can remember Ellis Burks was their center fielder, and I met Ellis a bunch at the park because he lives around here now, but he was like a high level cross checker for the Giants a few years ago. So like 2019, I think it was, when they were trying to trade Will Smith. I saw him at a ton of like Pawtucket games in like July, and I saw him in New Hampshire as well. So like it's one of those things when you see people like in consecutive days and they're behind home plate in these like at that point, desolate ballparks. No one was going to Pawtucket at all. And I actually like talked to him. I was like, hey, yeah, Alice, blah blah blah. And then we connected, and I was like, you were actually the center fielder like in the first baseball game I ever went to, and I was like a little kid, and I have like gray hair now, so I'm sure that made him feel great. But he was a good dude, and I ran to him a few more times after that season, and now he's actually like a commentator with the Red Sox. But yeah, it's funny how things are secular like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's funny as I started getting into cards around the same time. My brother was into them. He's 6 years older than me, and so I started getting around 87 tops is when I started getting into baseball cards. I was 6 or 7. And I kind of had a strange affinity for those Red Sox teams back then. It was, Wade Boggs was a monster and Clemens was huge. But I remember like the rookie cards or like, the rated rookies for like Mike Greenwell and Ellis Burks. I'm like, all these guys are studs. Yeah.
Spike Owens.
There you go.
Marty Barrett and Rich Gedman. I can name like that whole team. Weird dudes like, what was his name? Was it Rafael Quintana? Carlos Quintana, right? He was a first baseman. He was supposed to be good. He didn't pan out.
Sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Him nearing. So I have like another like layer to that where I actually was for 2 seasons. I was like part of the rotation of bat boys for the Pawtucket Red Sox when Mo Vaughn was there and like Valentin. And that's when I like first like because I grew up like right next to Pawtucket, and the guy that actually like worked the desk at my parents' gym was a Pawtucket Red Sox player by the name of Mickey Pina. And now I didn't get it then. I was like, why would this guy work? He's a professional baseball player. Now I understand he's probably working for made more money in the off season at the gym than he did with his jog. But so he would always like play basketball with me, like as I was like, I would hang out like in the waiting area, eat a bag of chips and watch what was ever on the TV for 45 minutes. Back when you leave your kids unattended. And so like he would talk to me constantly about like the game or whatever. And so that's how I really like got into baseball. It was very much like a me thing because my dad hates baseball. He's Brazilian and Portuguese, so he loves soccer. That's
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had no idea. No, it's kind of funny. I my parents don't particularly care for sports. My grandfather on my mom's side was a huge baseball fan, and he has all sorts of cool stories, or he had all sorts of cool stories and told me, and he kind of passed it love on to me. But I actually got it from. I had neighbors whose dad happened to be the sports information director at Eastern Michigan University. And they were like 3 boys, and they were all like 1 to 2 years older than me. And they were just the most sports nuts family I'd ever seen. We didn't have cable, so I'd go over there and watch them. Like, we'd hang out and watch ESPN, and it was like the most glorious thing I'd ever seen. And I was like, oh, we're watching NFL draft? I don't even know what that is. So yeah, it's interesting the way that the game finds us, but that's cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that. That's very interesting. I've known that you were out there in the Boston area, and so I assumed that there was kind of an early Red Sox fandom. But
yeah, and it was. I mean, like I grew up right on the Rhode Island border, so I really grew up like. If you've ever seen the movie Outside Providence, that's essentially like what my town was like. Like it was not like a suburb, but like an area that was like essentially like all neighborhoods with like high-rise houses, that sort of thing, outside of Providence, Rhode Island. Like I didn't really grow up in the Boston culture. Gotcha. I very much grew up in Rhode Island, which is split. There's a lot of Yankees fans because of Joe DiMaggio and like Italian. Like it's like there's a heavy New York influence. So it's split. Like it's not necessarily like it is once you get the 30 minutes. Like where I live now is Red Sox country. Like I live half hour west of Boston. I'm right next to Worcester. And like, it's funny how New England has these pockets, but that area is kind of split. And so, yeah, I was, and it became like a Pawtucket thing. Like I cared more about the minor leagues, I think, for a lot of years, more than I did in the major league club. Sometimes they were bad, so it was easy.
No, that makes sense. I haven't seen that movie, but I did listen to the first season of Crime Town, the podcast about Providence and Buddy Cianci.
So all those guys lived in the towns like Seekonk, all those towns. Like that's where I grew up. Like my parents, my family's from Fall River. So like a lot of like the bank robbers from like a few neighborhoods over from like where my parents grew up. And like, so like that crime town is like I have a free Buddy Cianci shirt. I have Andre the Giant has a posse, like that guy. I think he eventually did like the Obama posters. But like that was like a local like skateboard thing. That was like a punk rock skateboard thing. And it was like this weird picture of like Andre the Giant. Like if you Google it, you'll find it. But
I remember that. Yeah.
Stickers. Yeah, we had all these. It was a skateboard company. They made decks. So it's funny because they bring him up because he's the one that made like the whatever the thug mayor shirts or whatever they were. And yeah, it's that's a great show. That's like my favorite podcast of all time.
Well, yeah, we're just going deep into pop culture here, but I didn't see.
I go on tangents, baby.
I didn't. Well, no. It's all good. I didn't see the movie Mystic Pizza until I don't know a few years ago, but that's about Portuguese immigrants in Rhode Island, isn't it? Or something close to that. I think so.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it actually.
This is very important baseball stuff. I'm going to look at it now. Just to give me a synopsis real quick.
I thought it was in Mystic, Connecticut, I would assume.
That would make sense. What with it, place being, Mystic.
Yeah.
Mystic, Connecticut.
Annabeth Gish. Annabeth Gish and Julia Roberts. I mean, come on.
There you go.
But it was about Portuguese family. So there you go. I got half right. I don't know. We can get a little baseball right now. I know the Red Sox are playing right now. I had that game on. They were.
I haven't watched a Red Sox game since like 2019.
Oh wow!
I was watching Jordan Balazovic pitch. I just watched minor league baseball. I watch college baseball. Like I'm either at the field or I'm coaching kids or something. I mean, I honestly like I will put on a lot of like major league debuts, or if like there's no other games on that I really want to watch, I'll pop in. But now that the minors are going, like I'm definitely pretty much on MILB TV or at the park. So no, I haven't seen the Sox at all. Plus the damn blackouts. I don't get it with my MLB, and I'm like, and the NESN signing is brutal because they have their network. It's the monster, man.
They make it easy for us. Well, that's good. Because I know Yooper and I were going to talk a little bit of the Tigers because they're actually playing quality baseball for the last month or so. So it's worth talking about for once. So
perfect.
They went out and won today, which was nice to see. They had a bullpen game. It was Johnny Holstaff, and they came through. I didn't watch it intently. Did you?
Now that school's out and I wasn't umpiring today, I did catch quite a bit of it. Obviously, that Seattle offense is a good game. Is a good team to have a bullpen day with.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a pretty soft hitting unit overall. But the bullpen looked pretty good. They kept things under control. Defensively, they were sharp. Paredes made a really nice play, got him out of trouble once today. But what I'm amazed by is how obvious it is that the base running of all things, because you think about power, you think about pitching, you think about defense, you don't always think about base running. This club is taking a lot of extra bases right now, and they're playing kind of a fun style of baseball because for the first time in how long they have kind of some guys who can run. What a concept that is between Badu and Derek Hill and Nico Goodrum, and now they'll have Daz Cameron and even Robbie Grossman can move. Yeah. They're stealing some bags. They tagged up from first base on long fly balls and got to second today. They got a couple runs because of that. Kind of fun. It's certainly been a big difference from what we watched the last 2 years.
Yeah, even Eric Haas is an above-average runner, which is kind of funny. He's like the third fastest catcher in baseball if you count him as a full-time catcher. So, no, it's been I've often said that I didn't think coaches made that much of a difference, but I really think that Hinch and Federer are making a giant difference on this team. So I have to kind of take it. Maybe my argument is more like it's hard to really measure the difference they're making, but it's kind of
here's the thing: they took over. I hate to beg on coaches too because we're not in those dugouts. We don't exactly know what's going on. But when they took over from basically dead men walking, I mean, Gardenhire and Rick Anderson, I mean, I don't believe there was a whole lot of motivation and coaching going on there. Not that they had a lot of talent to work with, but I think we're seeing some differences this year.
Yeah, the pitchers really seem to buy into what Federer is doing with them, and it doesn't surprise me at all from watching what he was doing with those Michigan tees for a couple of years. That was is really cool, and it was funny. We shared it in the Slack chat, but we we're sitting down there behind home plate in Toledo and didn't realize Roger noticed that Dan Hubbs, the Tigers director of pitching development, was sitting right in front of us, and then like fifth or sixth inning, Jim Leland comes trotting down and sits right next to him.
Nice.
Like, oh, it's the skipper. But yeah, they're just sitting there discussing Matt Manning's start and talking about Angel DeJesus and stuff like that. So it was kind of funny. But
I can't wait to hear what you thought of Matt Manning now that he had a quality start under his belt.
Well, it was one of those things where he pitched well. I mean, the results were good, but it felt kind of like minor league well compared to big league. Like he just wasn't overpowering or dominating, except for one inning when he bumped up his fastball randomly, like the fifth inning. He sat for like 45 minutes because the Mudhens had a ridiculous inning where they sent 15 men to the plate and scored 8 or 9 times. And he came out and he had been 92, 94 for most of the night, and he came out 95, 96 for some reason. And the breaking ball was a little sharper. And then he went back to 92, 94 in the sixth. But yeah, it was just, it was a solid performance, but it wasn't the sort of thing where I said, like, watched and said, this guy needs to be in the majors. Like the changeup is still not very good. He threw one that was like quality. I'm like, hey, there you go. And that was it. And he seemed to, Chip was pointing out, and I wasn't paying as close attention to as those guys, they're charting every pitch and stuff. I'm just out there, getting video. And he said, basically every other changeup that Manning threw was inside to a left-handed hitter, which didn't make any sense to him. And I was like, well, he can't possibly be doing that on purpose, right? He just doesn't have command of the pitch. I don't know. But yeah, and he'll throw the occasional good plus breaking ball, but a lot of them are kind of sweepy or they come out of his hand and I don't know. It's somewhat disappointing because this was the guy I think a lot of people had high hopes, thinking like, he's going to be the best of the bunch. He's the most athletic. He's got the traditional ace, look, and it's not there. We know, everybody knows that prospects don't develop on like a linear path, but he's just kind of been stagnating for a year plus now, and it's disheartening. Well,
I still lean toward the fact that we're around 30 innings for the year.
Yeah.
And he was off last year, and we don't know exactly what went on in those alternative sites and how productive that was. I'm not as worried as some. It's obviously nice to see him get a good start under his belt and see what he builds on from here. I don't know. I don't want to be as down as some. Because again, it's been basically a bad month of May. Guys are allowed to struggle.
And it is, we kind of tend to forget the mental aspect of some of this stuff. I remember a couple years ago, Parker Meadows, the Tigers outfield prospect, second rounder in 2018. Everybody was like, hey, why is he bunting so much? Like, this is a guy, he should be hitting for power and stuff. And we interviewed him. He's like, yeah, sometimes I just want to be able to say I had a hit in the game just to feel better. And it's like, I get that. Like, when you're a player, it's got to be hard to feel like, hey, all these struggles are great for my development. Going 0 for 16 in these last 4 games is really going to teach me something.
Yeah.
If Matt Manning going out there and giving up just 2 earned runs over 6, like, makes him feel more confident and he starts to, feel like he can get guys out and execute his pitches better, that's great. I just, when you're looking at the pure stuff, it just didn't look particularly special to me. But I don't know. We'll see. Like you said, it's a long season and there's plenty of time to go. But I don't want to just, filibuster here, Geoff. I don't. What do you? No, you were watching Balazovic.
Yeah, no, but
what did you see from him?
But honestly, I think even on Manning, and I think this is something that there's a few layers of this, right? And you kind of went through some of this, but I feel like there was a lot of confidence in Manning, not necessarily because of like the overall, arsenal of pitches, because he certainly doesn't go as deep, as Skubal or, of course, Mize. He's primarily been a 2-pitch guy, and there's been, one GIF kind of floating around for a while where he like breaks off and actually pronates on a changeup. And I think, the first thing you mentioned about, why the changeups were going inside to left-handers, I think it's simply because he's not turning it over. Like, he's not actually able to pronate. Like, he's such a, if you know about, in terms of like the sort of types of throwing that guys are, how they shape their pitches, and it's a lot like running or whatever. But, there's pronators and there's supinators, and then there's unicorns like Grayson Rodriguez who can do both. There's not many guys that can do that. And I just feel like he's such a supination profile in terms of being able to spin a breaking ball and get that high-rise fastball. But I wonder if they tried to drop a slot down a little bit, or if they screwed with that a little bit just in terms of the orientation on his fastball, and it just hasn't been as efficient. Because I felt like he got a lot more ride consistently. And I know Chip was telling me that in terms of what the four-seamer was coming in at last night on just raw spin rates. And I usually don't take much away at raw spin rates because you can have a really great pitch shape and have a really efficient fastball at 2,100 to 2,300. Like, you don't have to be a 2,500, RPM, like absolute unit, like every time.
Yeah.
Like not everybody's like that. And has Casey Mize, for example, his best fastball can be 2,200 RPMs, but he was sub 2,000. And that's really odd. Like, that's a very strange thing, unless you're throwing straight like yak or sinkers,
Yeah,
like
that's
Luis Castillo, like drop off, and run, where there's just a ton of like seam shifted wake on it. But like, I kind of wonder if they wanted to be able to add like a slider or like a third pitcher. And I know I've heard that he's messed around with a cutter. There might've been a few last night, but overall, I think the problem was like his curveball was always easy to identify out of his hand. Even 2 years ago, it was easy to identify out of his hand. And I think that's somewhat of an issue. If he's a reliever, he's a 2-inning guy, maybe he can be almost like one of those fireman roles that you see a lot now with the guys that are coming in the highest leverage situations, and they're used in a variety of situational ways throughout games. Maybe that's what Manning could potentially be. But he's got to either really perfect and be able to maximize his fastball and curveball shape, which doesn't seem like he's doing right now, or he's got to develop a third pitch. And it doesn't seem like the changeup is a viable one. He's got to figure something else out. Because it's been 3-4 years now. I just don't think it's going to develop. Now, I think that falls into another question that I wanted to throw back at you guys. How concerned are you as Tigers guys in terms of their lack of internal development, in terms of adding value to players? I always feel like looking at the draft, and this is something, because I do a lot of draft coverage, and I was thinking about this last night, and I was listening to what Chip was telling me about, Manning and sort of his takeaways. And I'd obviously read, Jake Bowe's post as well, but have they had the talent within the organization? It's just a matter of they can't make guys better. You look at the Rays. I even think you look at the Orioles right now, and you have guys like Kevin Smith or Bishop or Cameron Bishop who are coming out, and they're much better than they ever were. Kyle Bradish is a better version of the guy that was traded for Dylan Bundy. Now he's in the precipice of the major leagues, and he's a really, really strong, athlete on the mound with really good pitch shape, and it's maximized. Like, you have to maximize these profiles. The Marlins are doing that now. Of course, the Rays and the Dodgers. And I feel like they're an organization right now where anybody that gets drafted there, I don't know if I even necessarily wish it on them. It seems like it's figure it out in the minor leagues, because it doesn't seem like there's many guys that come out the other side better players. Maybe that's just my takeaway, from a 30,000 foot view on it, because I don't really touch the Tiger stuff at Prospects Live, of course.
I think you're spot on. I mean, for years and years, we've viewed the Tigers as either bad at drafting or bad at development or both. And for a long time, when I would go to the minor league games, I would get video and stuff like that, but I would also go to interview the players. And without fail, every time I asked a player, like, hey, is there anything that the organization has you working on specifically? They'd say no. Now, I don't know if they were just being like, I don't want to tell this guy because, we're not supposed to. But they would say, like, no, they just want me to go out there and compete. And it's like, I mean, there's got to be more to it than that. They have to have been trying to teach you something. But I also, like, you watch and you don't ever really see the progress. I've never witnessed a Tigers minor league game where it's clear that they have a pitcher working on something. Like, oh, that's weird. Matt Manning threw 40 changeups tonight. I've never seen it. Never seen it once. It does feel very much like a, hey, go out there and perform, and if you do well, we'll promote you. Like it. And I know. I'm sure they're doing things to try to help these guys, but they don't. Until Skubal showed up, I can't think of any lower round player that really exceeded expectations a lot. I mean, Alex Avila was a 5th rounder, but well, that's 2008. Yeah, and he's the son of the.
You're going back, absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's what I think, Geoff. The case you laid out, as you were doing it, I was thinking, well, if I wanted to be a contrarian, how would I verbalize a case back on the other side to you? And I can't think of a good one. So the successes just haven't been there. I mean, they don't even. The frustrating thing, and even back when they were competing in 2012 and 2013, how many teams can come up with relievers on the fly out of their organization that can come up and give you 30 good innings randomly in a year? The Tigers almost never do that. And that should be something a lot of teams can do. And they don't even get that right.
You know, and we've seen some signs maybe that they're getting better at that. They've definitely moved into the frontier of the, TrackMan and Driveline and all that stuff in the last couple of years. And some of their 2019 picks and 2020 guys look pretty solid so far. But again, I don't know if that's better talent identification or a better melding of the drafting and development departments. But yeah, it's not definitely not a thing. Like, we saw Matt Manning develop pretty well from 2016 to 2018. He took some strides. He started using his athleticism more, and he, looked like a legit pitcher. And I guess people kind of thought that was just going to keep going, and it's not. It hasn't. And I think that's. I think a lot of guys in the system tend to hit walls, and the Tigers can't seem to get them over the top of that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's been.
I do think Hinch and Fetter being there does change the direction potentially because of where they came from. I'm familiar with Fetter just from covering the draft and having friends within the industry that have a personal relationship with him. So I know the type of things that he appreciates, the type of things that he considers. So I'm sure that the analytical side of things has improved. I actually hadn't heard awful stuff. They were one of the teams even back in 2019 that I did see with TrackMan at the park. So I don't think that they're totally behind in that sense, but I wonder if it's limited in certain pockets where the major league level, this particular stop does this thing well, but there isn't like a cohesive effort from the top where everything is really micromanaged and managed really well, where I think you see that within Baltimore. That's what the structural change has been between the last regime and this one.
Yeah, and basically it's still a group of kind of scouting guys, and not there's anything wrong with that. But our buddy Brandon Day from Bless You Boys he always uses a nice analogy. He said they're basically trying to get a bunch of dinosaurs to evolve into mammals instead of just hiring a bunch of mammals, and it does feel like that at times. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like I said, we've seen some progress with the big league team this year, and we're putting that on the coaches, I think, to a certain degree. And there've been some guys who are performing better in the minors than we expected. They're not necessarily like maximizing tooled up guys anymore. It's more finding, interesting fourth outfielders and utility infielders and stuff like that. But it's somewhat progress. But I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if we should kind of move into the draft from there, or if we want to go absolutely segments, because it's a curious year where the Tigers are picking third, and I know you're not necessarily deep on the Red Sox, but you are up there in the Northeast, so being able to see some Red Sox prospects come through is probably good for you. And so the Red Sox picked fourth. I'm kind of curious what your ideal scenario for Boston is, and what your nightmare scenario for Boston would be.
Oh man. I think the thing is they're fortunate enough, the Tigers and the Red Sox, to be within that top 7 group within this draft. And I honestly think after the first 7 picks, it's going to be chaos. And I even think some things could change within that top 5. I mean, if you looked at our mock, I think we kind of went off board, and that's something that when we got on to a call, we got into a StreamYard just like this, and it was myself and Joe Doyle and Ian Smith and of course Tyler Jennings, and we've all pocketed in different parts of the country, seen different guys, have been to different games at different sources, so we have a lot of information that we have to go through. And I sort of said, like, let's not regret like not following hunches and things that we've seen and heard, and let's just put it out there, because like, what's the point of being chalk on like a mock draft? So I honestly think in some ways that was the ideal scenario for the Red Sox if they land Jack Leiter, if he doesn't go 1-2. We'll see. I still maintain that I think he's probably the smartest pick 1-1. I think he has the best chance to click and be an actual mid-rotation arm, especially of all the college guys. And I think there's a lot of relievers in the prep class, and we kind of know with these prep arms too that it takes a lot to get them out the other side. And sometimes it's the guy you take in the third or fourth round that sometimes pans out to be better. Look at Riley Pint, rest in peace, his career, right? That just happened this week. But I think, any of the prep shortstops, I'd honestly be fine with if they landed Watson, if it was Mayer, who I don't actually think will be around, but Watson or Mayer, Lawler, House, any of those guys I'm fine with. I wouldn't want him to take Kumar Rocker, frankly. I think I just don't know. I'm a little concerned about Rocker, frankly, just in terms of the command control issues, really developing that third pitch. He's got the changeup. I think the cutter showed promise at certain points this year, but never really fully materialized. He's got a great breaking ball. I do think that there's some opportunity to maximize his fastball. I kind of hope that he does end up in a progressive organization that's able to sort of maximize his strengths. It wouldn't shock me if he lands outside of the top 10 even at this point. I really think it's a real possibility. Because he's the most famous guy in the draft, but I also think you have to factor in baseball wasn't like necessarily like football or basketball, where we're used to like these picks where they have immediate impact and they change the short-term outlook of your team. That doesn't happen in baseball, even with the best picks. The guys that go straight to the pros typically have really low ceilings, right? So you want, or the big league, excuse me. But you want a guy that, you can at least develop for a year or two. I think it's a lot of the time it's about fit within the organization, the type of things that organization develops well. Not every organization develops everything well. And certainly there's certain organizations that develop some things better than others, just based on who's within. And the other part of it is money, the bonus pool structure. If this might be the last year of it, but the bonus pool structure, I think, creates another layer in this entire process. And I think people sometimes forget that. So, I guess I'm kind of beating around the bush here, but I guess it's Leiter would probably be number one. But I honestly, with Davis, any of these guys is perfectly fine, because I think there's just sort of a cluster of good players at the top.
Yeah, and I just want to, if in case anybody's listening and hasn't seen or hasn't been to Prospects Live, you guys just do a spectacular job. It's the best looking mock draft I've ever seen. Like, I really love those like, I don't know where you get those GIFs or whatever you like, the videos.
Yeah. That's Joe Doyle right there. He does a great job.
It's really awesome. And go down, great information. I think it was the first place I saw Watson at 2. Mm-hmm. And then I think Jim Callis hinted in his latest mock that like that's a legit possibility.
He had our top 5, but I think number 5 was like available prep shortstop. And then within the blurb, like in the article, he mentions Harry Ford, who we have dope on that Baltimore is potentially connected to.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. That's a really interesting one too. One of the most athletic catchers. Do you think they'd draft him as a catcher?
I think they would just draft him as a baseball player and then figure out what he fits into. I feel like he's a guy that could play. He could play in the infield. Like, he's got the arm, he's got the athleticism, he moves. He's a plus runner. He's got a great swing, really powerful. And he's just an explosive athlete. He's incredibly strong. Not like the biggest guy, but I think there's projection on there. And as you said, he's just super athletic. So yeah, I think Harry Ford, if I'm in an area guy that said that's a top 10 player in the draft, I'd be like, okay. I don't even think that would have been crazy even 3 months ago, but I just think we get so used to these chalk lists that get pumped out from these content farms, and we're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is what it is, versus like, what teams are thinking about. There's a lot of no team is 100% on who their pick is. Maybe the Pirates. I don't know.
Geoff, to go back to Rocker real quick, and I want to cover as many as we can, but I just wrote something on him recently. I know, at least I don't believe a lot of organizations would change everything based on a couple of games. But we saw Rocker dominate the College World Series in the postseason in 19. If he were to do it again, and he got off to a decent start against Presbyterian, which I don't know how good Presbyterian is, but 7 good innings, If he has a run like that in the postseason again this year, do you think that would solidify him up in the closer to the top 5 than out of the top 10?
See, I don't know. I think he's going to be too expensive. I think they're going to have the opportunity to be like, all right, I can take Watson, or I can take Lawler, or I can take Mayer, or I can take House. I think he's the guy that everybody's sleeping on, in my opinion, but we can get into that later. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily completely out of the top 5 conversation, but from what we've heard, I haven't heard Rocker as a real option, because the Tigers, in my opinion, it's Mayer, it's Leiter, or it's Job. And if Mayer, Leiter go 1-2, it's going to be Jack. I think it's going to be Jackson Job.
Yeah, that's it. All the talk we've heard is that Marcelo Meyer is their number 1 choice, and then I've heard people say that Job would be number 2, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'd be tough to see. That's something that I think Tigers fans
better wants Leiter.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that'd be kind of fun, but no, I do. I think there's. I wouldn't be super upset with Job, just because he's a really good talent, but I think that is kind of the nightmare scenario for a lot of Tigers fans. They're tired of all the rebuilding. They don't want a pitcher you have to wait 4 years on or whatever, and it's like, well,
because other college picks have worked out so well.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing.
like the low floor Nico or Nick Quintana, who's just like, I don't know how when I saw that, and that draft sticks in my head, because having seen him on the Cape, I would have been like, yeah, Lipsius is better than he is, like significantly better than he is. And I would have been like, yeah, Bryant Packard is better than he is. And then they took him beforehand, and they took the other guys, and I was like, I like the other ones that they took better than this guy.
Yeah, and
every year
he hasn't played in 4 games. One of the interesting things is that you're writing for Motor City Bengals. When I was doing we did our mock draft there, where we just had 5 guys pick for teams, and I was looking for pictures, and in the system they have pictures of the Oakland A's war room, their draft room from 2019, and you can see 200 players ranked on their boards, and you could see their top 30. It's kind of gone at that point, but they hadn't picked yet, because I remember the shortstop they took that year, was it Logan Davidson?
Yeah.
He was still on the board, so they hadn't picked yet, and you could see Nick Quintana like 34th on their board, and I was like, all right, like it's weird.
I thought he was bad. Like, he was one of those guys where, like, I honestly chased him out, because he was and this always happens with the Cape. It's one of the beautiful things is there's guys that pop. Like, I remember I saw Nick Gonzalez probably what, 2 years ago this weekend, and for the first time, was his first game against Chatham, and he hit a homer, and he went the opposite way. He hit the ball 5 miles an hour or something off like a 93 mile per hour fastball in the outer half of the plate. It was just crazy bat speed. And I remember I tweeted, I was like, Nick Gonzalez is a first rounder. And it's like, you see stuff like that, and immediately you're like, all right, that's like, it's not just park-aided New Mexico State black magic. Like, it's legitimate. And then it was the same thing with like Quintana. Was like, I can't wait to see Quintana with Yarmouth Dennis. That was 2018. That was loaded. Vaughn was on Wareham. Bryson Stott was on Wareham. You had JJ Bleday on chat. Like this, Orleans, just loaded team. Spencer Torkelson was there early. Greg Jones was on this team, and Chatham was a really, really loaded lineup. But you saw Quintana, and it was like, all right, this is bad. And then you go back again, and you see him again. You're like, oh, this is worse. And then you see him again. You're like, this is a trend. Like, this is not good at all. This is terrible. And it was bad in the field. I didn't think it was good at the plate. I was shocked by that pick. That was one of those picks where I was like, "Eee."
Yeah, I remember looking into his stats because I was like, "Oh, this isn't great," and I was like, "Oh, well, he homered off Manoah. Maybe they were there for that game."
Yeah, it must have been.
But yeah, I mean, the first time we went and saw him in West Michigan in 2019, Rogelio and I did. He went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts and looked. They were all non-competitive at bats, and I was like,
Yeah.
I just chalked it up. I'm like, well, he's a second rounder. Yeah, he's a bad day. And Rogelio was like, no, he's no good. I'm like, all right, okay. And yeah, that's come to fruition, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know. In any event, but the Cape is back this year, isn't it? In some capacity. It's not what it once was, but
Yeah, no, it's full go. It's full go. The rosters might be more loaded than they've ever been. You know,
all right,
yeah, because
nice.
you're getting guys that are going into their like pre-draft summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not getting like the guys that are like you will get a few for like a week or so before the draft. But yeah, no, it's loaded up. I mean, there's one roster where it's like it's Parada, Nolan McLean, Caden Grice. That's Chatham. Like that's the middle of their order. Jake DeLeo. And then you go through some of the other rosters and some of the arms they have. And yeah, I was going through the rosters last night, and like Orleans is loaded as usual. They got Carter Young and they got Jace Young, which is a heck of a middle infield.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see what happens with USA Baseball, but no, it's actually going to be great this year. It might be better than ever. Yeah, the quality is going to be really high, and I think they're pushing more and more like, you know, draft eligible next year, like 2022s. They're pushing that draft eligible class to go there, and then trying to run some of these other leagues as sort of underclassmen leagues. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I always really enjoyed your Cape Cod coverage up there. It's really good, and lots of great video and information. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll be doing it for Perfect Game this summer, actually.
Oh, nice.
You heard it here first. I haven't actually even announced it on Twitter or anything, but yeah, I'm doing. I'm going to be working with PG this summer. That's
very cool.
Yeah, you know, so I'll be down there for more than a few weeks, and I obviously live in the area, so I'll shoot down to some games too. But yeah, I'm hoping to get more Cape coverage than I've ever had before, which is like the best ramp up for the draft. Like last year, because I had seen all those guys in 2019, like I just knew everybody, you know, because even before they pop, and then when like the spring comes and they start hitting, I'm like, yeah, I know that guy. I've seen him. I got video here. Like, yeah, oh yeah, I wrote notes on that guy. No big deal. Oh yeah, he's doing this now. Oh, awesome. Good to see. You know, like whatever it is, it just gives you such a good foundation.
Well, yeah.
How many games a day do you see there? Do you just pick out one, or do you travel between 2 or 3? Or
it's typically just based on timing. You usually can only do like one game a day because they're all simultaneous for the most part. Like usually the games start anywhere from 5 to 7. There's certain parks that don't even have lights. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, once you hit like in Katuitt, once you hit dusk, game's over. You know, so there's weird stuff like fog outs in Chatham. So you got to plan accordingly based on the weather. Be able to pivot. But I'll be getting the scout emails and that sort of thing. So I'll be probably chasing whatever the best starting matchup is, or, you know, if I want to get a feel for a team, but I'm trying to plan it out strategically. So like I'm sitting on the teams that are way down the peninsula, which is a good, you know, hour and a half, you know, hour, 40-minute drive from my house. Okay. I'm trying to make sure that I stay there for a few weeks, and early on I get a really good base of seeing those guys sort of in the middle of July, right in the middle of the season, the week before the All-Star game. So that's kind of the meat of the season, because it's only a 6-week season. And yeah, I'll get a lot of that. And then the other weeks I'll probably be driving down and I'll be hitting teams like Wareham, Bourne, Katuitt, Falmouth, that are just a little bit closer to my house.
It sounds amazing. Last summer, during the quarantine, when we needed stuff to write about, I just pulled the baseball bucket list thing out and wrote about that. And I've been following the Cape League for a long time. I put it number 1 on my list, actually, is to spend a week on the Cape one of these summers, just riding up and down the Cape and seeing as many games as I can. And I just think it would be an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You're free games too, so you don't even spend all that much money. It's
that'd be great.
I think it's like baseball heaven. They're playing in high school fields, and you know it's I think it'd be interesting, just the collection of talent. You know, some of the coaches, the history of these places, but also you got a bunch of guys that are chasing their dream right at this really big moment, and so much of what they do down there can dictate, how they're viewed the next year. I think the K probably might have even been more important in the 2020 draft because it was the biggest sample we had for a lot of these guys.
Yeah. No, that's Yoop. You take your umpire gear and see if you can sneak on the field. Frank Drebin style.
See if they chase me out of there then.
No, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on any more of the names at the top of the draft, Yoop, but
well, I just think that as I'm fascinated by the bargaining that's going to be going on. And I'm a little more optimistic that if the Tigers truly believe Marcelo Meyer is the number one guy on their list, that he may get there because of the signability and the fact that if the Pirates are really looking for someone to take a haircut on money on their draft slot, if Meyer is really confident that the farthest he can fall is number 3 to Detroit, he doesn't really have to give up that much. And maybe that makes the Pirates go in another direction, whether it's Khalil Watson or Davis, as mocked here. So about a week ago, I was thinking, I don't think Meyer's going to get there. But now and we have 5 weeks to go. A lot can change, but I think that might happen.
yeah, I mean, I could see it. I was coming up with scenarios where they have to play hey, guarantee him $8 million, and then take Tommy Mason, Nico Cavadas with 32 and 39.
He's a USC commit, so I wouldn't worry too much about the signability. He's not going. He's not going to USC to play baseball unless he wants to lose about $3 million.
Oh, Jamal O'Gwen.
Yeah, the worst player I saw in the Cape that summer. And
that's
G3 guys.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
It's hard to believe that happened to USC. I mean, that was the baseball program for so long.
My dad would talk about it when I was a kid, like Freddie Lynn, blah blah blah. There were all these guys that came out of USC, and like that's not the case anymore. Of course, like a bunch of different guys, obviously, but yeah, I even think a lot of those Pac-12 schools, Arizona State, like Arizona, it doesn't seem like they're nearly as competitive as they used to be. Of course, one of them, probably do something, but yeah, regardless, I think you see it even with UCLA. Like it's just not like the SEC and ACC are just so stacked right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fun things for us to speculate now. I mean, it's still so up in the air for the number 3 pick, but the Tigers do have 2 of the other picks in the top 40, and so it's like, oh man, who are they gonna, 32, 39? Who can they go after? And I keep. Like if they go prep pitcher at 3, I feel like they probably won't do that again in the 30s. But I kind of been like I'd like to see him go after Thatcher Hurd, but that's the sort of guy like we were talking earlier, like one of those comp round guys or second or third rounders who eventually develop into something more. Although I don't think he's really popped this spring from what I've seen. I think he's still 88, 92. But it seems like there's more there.
Depends on the start. Yeah, and there's certainly obviously he's got great ability to spin a breaking ball. So no sort of issues there. But yeah, I wonder a little bit about what the ultimate ceiling is, if he can really be a starting pitcher and how you develop him and sort of what the plan is. Depends where he goes. I don't know if I'd be if he ends up with the Tigers, frankly. There's a fair amount of I think like that second tier of prep bats are pretty good. There's going to be somebody maybe like a Lonnie White that drops that you can then sign. He's a 4-star football recruit as a wide receiver to Penn State as well. But I think he's potentially signable. If you give him enough money to play baseball, don't let him get on campus and win a Heisman, man. It's a bad idea. But I think there's guys like that, maybe a Josh Baez, who I think is a really interesting player. I think that's where the value is going to be. It's going to be in that prep class and that second tier, and even like that second tier, that college pitching group. I think there's a lot of good arms within there. Even some guys that got back to campus that maybe shouldn't have and wouldn't have if it was even a 10-round draft and not just a 5. Matt Mikulski from like Fordham is a really interesting arm that you could probably save a little money on and then bonus somebody like extremely in like round 3. I wonder if some of that stuff happens because there's a lot of good value. Someone's going to come away from this draft with 7 or 8 really good, legitimate prospects. I don't know if they're all major leaguers, but 7 or 8 guys are going to make a top 30 list. I think there's going to be a team that comes away with that. Just depends on who.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point you make about the guys who made it back to school, who you're going to be able to get a slight discount on those guys just because they're older and they don't want to go back to school again. For them, you would think so. And like you said, I remember first reading about Mikulski, I think, in some of your Cape coverage from a couple of years ago, and back then
I had him at the All-Star game. Yeah,
he wasn't throwing as hard.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. He wasn't throwing the yackers. He was, and we interviewed him, and he just spent an extreme amount of time in the weight room and then in the lab and shortened up his arm action. And once he did that, within a week or so, he gained a few ticks in the fastball, and it changed the slot and the orientation of a lot of his pitches, made his breaking ball sharper, and the fastball shape was much better, and he had velocity. So it was just sort of an ultimate win all around. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind with the draft and just prospects in general is, players get better. They're human beings, and there's a bunch of different reasons for why they get better or don't get better. But, it's always just sort of about what's the foundation here and, what can we do to sort of, maximize the potential outcomes. And it's about doing that within your organization. I think that's what we're really seeing, the last few years in terms of who can develop and who can't.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on injury risk guys like Jaden Hill?
So I wasn't the biggest Jaden Hill fan, even prior to the injury. I think he's actually a value pick now, which I think is kind of funny. I wouldn't touch him. I mean, if back end of the second round, yeah, I could definitely take a shot there. But I'm not crazy about these sort of sinker, change up guys with kind of weak breaking balls. I know his slider that people kind of go crazy for it, but it's low spin, and I just think people are going to hit it. He was getting hit around. He was getting hit before he even got hurt, and he can't get deep into games. He's an interesting player for, like I said, I think another organization that has a game plan for him and can develop that, like Cole Wilcox. I didn't like Cole Wilcox in San Diego. I like Cole Wilcox a whole lot in Tampa, because I think that Cole Wilcox, they can maximize that profile, even if it's as a reliever, and he's just a really good reliever that gives him a different look and a guy that can strike people out and still get a lot of ground balls with that sinker. So he's not really my flavor Hill even to start with, and then the injury, you put that in there. If I'm a Tigers fan, if that's my 3rd round pick, I'd be happy. I wouldn't want to be taking that guy in the 2nd, frankly.
Well, they have the 2nd largest bonus pool, so they can do some things in those rounds. So
yeah, they can. We'll see how well they do it. I don't know. They've had a couple decent drafts in a row, but I still maintain low expectations. So I don't know. We could probably talk draft all night, but we probably should hit our segments real quick and then get Geoff out of here so he can live his life. Get back to watching some minor league baseball on the West Coast, maybe. So yeah, I mean, we start with inside the numbers. Yoop, you have inside the number for us today?
Yeah, mine's a real simple one. 094. Jared Kelenic gets sent back today or this week. I was, with the Mariners coming to Detroit, I was looking forward to watching some more of him, even though he'd been struggling. And sure enough, they sent him out. Obviously, not the end of the world for him. He's a good player. He's just always been a pet favorite of mine because I saw him play here in Iowa when he was in high school. So, but he was. I think after that 2 home run game, he went 5 for 75, and he was on an 0 for 39 stretch with 18 strikeouts. I can see sending him back and just getting his confidence level up, getting him a lot more at bats at the AAA level, and I'm sure he's going to reappear this summer. And my bet is he'll be fine. But he went through a really ugly stretch. It just shows, for a lot of these guys, it's not automatic success. I mean, you look at, I think Alex Bregman went 2 for 45 or something like that when he started, and Mike Trout hit 220 for 150 at bats. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think Jared Kelenic has put up with a lot of failure in his career. So we'll see how he adapts here.
It turns out Major League Baseball is kind of hard.
Yes.
Anyway, But yeah, it kind of likes real red ass, so I'm sure he'll come back angry and figure it out. But no, that's a good one. Geoff, I don't know. Did you have an inside the number for us or?
Yeah, sure. So this is a prospect that actually homered in the game that Rogelio and Chip and Jake Bowes were at tonight. 86.8%. That's the contact rate for Yankees prospect Diego Castillo. Hit a homer tonight. He's shown a lot more power than he ever had. The hit tool in terms of bat to ball skills, when I had seen Somerset a few weeks back, he was one of the guys that sort of stuck out to me. And he's continued to perform. He runs a little bit too. Really good all-around player. Could play a few different spots within the infield. I don't think he's a complete butcher out there either. But I only saw him for a single game at second base. So I think Diego Castillo is potentially a player that people should be paying attention to. And I think he's not getting maybe as much hype as some other guys that are on that team, like a Dermis Garcia or someone like that. But Diego Castillo is a better all-around player. And I think, if you can find these guys that can make contact at an elite rate, still walk a little bit, and they show that approach. That's the kind of guy where the walk rate's probably going to climb once he gets up to the major league level. He's also a guy that, has a really nice batted ball profile. I think his line drive rate's somewhere around 25%, fly ball rate somewhere around 35%, high contact rate, not a lot of swing and miss, and he's able to elevate. I think that's a really good baseline to start with. And, he's age appropriate for the level as well. He's just turned 23. He'll be 23 for the entirety of the season at the AA level. So not too bad coming off the COVID missed year.
Yeah, nice. I was excited that they got to go see Peraza, who just got bumped up there to double.
Same.
It was funny. I almost picked a number, not quite like that, but I was looking at swinging strike rates in the minors. Yeah. And I saw that Isaac Paredes has the seventh lowest at 5.2%. But that was going to be my number, but I chose not to. Because I'm not quite sure about the power there. But my number is 243, which is the isolated power for Detroit Tigers catchers this year after today, which is the best in baseball.
Everybody saw it coming.
Yeah, I didn't think. And for people, in case people are listening and don't know what isolated power is, it's just slugging percentage minus batting average, basically getting rid of the singles to see who's actually hitting for power. Eric Haas having a monster month has helped them there, but you also have, Wilson Ramos with 6 homers in the first couple weeks of the year, and Jake Rogers today hit his 3rd home run and then also hit a triple. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking around. It's actually the 14th best ISO for any position group for a team in all of baseball, which doesn't sound like that much. But then you think okay, you got 30 teams and there's basically 9 position groups. Subtract some of the, if you count DH, subtract some of the National League DH teams, and so 14th out of 250, 260 is not bad, and it's definitely not something I saw coming this year with Wilson Ramos and Grayson Griner getting the most of the catching. So that's been kind of fun. And in case you were curious, I looked up the worst position groups, and right now it is Houston center field, where their ISO is 0.051. I think it's the Miles Straw effect.
Yeah,
and Pittsburgh shortstop at 0.050. So. That's tough break.
Ooh.
I was
expecting to get O'Neal Cruz up.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's been on a burner for the last 3 weeks. So
is he 6'10" yet? Is he posting guys up?
I think he's 6'7" officially at this point.
That's crazy. I desperately want to see that in the majors.
The craziest thing is his offensive game. You would think that he was built like Mookie Betts. He walks. He hasn't been striking out a ton. He's been hitting for power. He's been stealing bases, and he can do a little bit of everything. And I think he's just got that monster raw power. The fact that he has that level of sort of plate approach, despite the fact that he's that big, is kind of wild. He's essentially the size of Aaron Judge as a shortstop and doesn't have the swing and miss that even Judge had throughout the minors.
The Tigers have run into him in spring training a couple times, and he's done damage. I vividly remember him lacing line drives to the wall in left field, going like Oppo, and like, oh man, look at that. It's like,
what's the position is really the issue, you know?
yeah, well, because I remember from my early days of following prospects, the kid on the Dodgers, was it Joel Guzman? I think that was his name, who they signed at like 6'1", and he grew to be like 6'7" and couldn't hit anymore. They never saw it coming, and it's like, oh well, that's a tough break. Because he was a shortstop, and they're like, we can't play him anywhere now. He's a tight end. But all right, so now we can get into our good, bad, and ugly. It's not as much fun without Raj playing the drops, but maybe we can get it a little quicker. So I'll start with you this time, Geoff. You want to go with your good, bad, and ugly?
Why don't you guys go first?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah.
That way I know the format here. I'm a big traditionalist, you know.
Yeah, no, it's just So I'll start with my good is Carlos Correa, who's always been one of the most talented hitters in baseball, but he seems like he doesn't really ever play like it, or does when he does, it's for a short stretch and then he gets hurt. You know, has a strange massage incident or something like that. But yeah, he's playing like an MVP right now. He's in his last 30 days, he leads all of baseball in FWAR, 207 rated runs created plus, only behind Vlad Jr. And I've talked about Vlad Jr. before, so he can't be the good every week. But yeah, Correa's he was hitting 355, 478, 624 heading into tonight over the last month. I think he walked in his first 2 at bats, but I didn't see anything more. But it's great for Correa, but it only makes him more expensive in free agency, of course. And Tigers fans kind of have this consistent dream about him being the one shortstop they go out and get. But I'm not quite sure that Chris Ilitch is ready to pony up $250 million or whatever. So, but good for him. My bad is injuries everywhere. We saw 3 Tigers hit the IL today. One was expected. Derek Hill crashed into the wall last night and came out of the game. It was funny. We were down in Toledo, and people were like, oh, start looking for Daz to leave the game. We're like, what? And he eventually did. But then one came out of nowhere. Derek Holland went back on the IL. And then there was a freak accident when they were just warming up where Ronnie Garcia just collapsed. His knee gave out on him. It was, when that first came out, it was like, oh my God, did he have a heart attack or something like that? Was he like, is this a heart condition? And it was like, no, his knee just blew up on him while he's playing catch. It's like, well, that's no good. And so, the Tigers are literally down to the last 3 pitchers on their 40-man. One of them is Alex Faedo, who's recovering from Tommy John surgery. He's not ready. The other one's Manning, and then the other one's Joey Wentz, who's coming back from Tommy John surgery, and he's been down in Lakeland and just kind of getting his feel back. So it's been rough, but it's not like the Tigers are alone there. I mean, they also have Turnbull down with arm soreness and Fulmer with fatigue, and Victor Reyes is hurt. But Nick Madrigal tore his hamstring, I think today, or it was yesterday. I don't remember when it happened, but he's out till August. Kopech has a hammy. John Means hurt his shoulder. Sonny Grain has got a groin. Colton Wong and Lorenzo Cain are hurt. Everybody on the Mets. It's just been ugly for injuries this year. So even though it's been ugly, that's my bad. my ugly is the Texas Rangers offense over the last month, which is not. I'm not going to say it's a huge surprise. I think most people expected them to be pretty bad this year, but it's noteworthy in its ugliness, I guess I'd say. Over the last 30 days, they're hitting 200, 272, 325 as a team for a WRC plus of 68, which is 8 points below the next 2 worst teams, Arizona and Colorado. And I think Arizona at one point lost 35 games in a row. So, it's a strange offense. Adolis Garcia is still like their best hitter, but he's cooled off considerably. I think we all kind of expected that. And then you got Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who's just one of the most interesting players in baseball as a third baseman, second baseman, shortstop, catcher with like speed and hitting ability, but not much power. It's just a very strange profile to me. But and then Joey Gallo does what he did. He hit like 190 last month, but with 5 homers and 20 walks and 25 strikeouts. But then everybody else on the team is just struggling, Joe Namath style. You got Nick Solak hitting 177 with a homer. Chris Davis got DFA'd. Willie Calhoun 189 with 2 homers. Nate Lowe 165 with a homer. It's been an ugly month for the Rangers. So that is it for my good, bad, and ugly. Yoop, you want to give yours a shot?
Yeah. I watched a fair amount of college baseball when I could this weekend, and Nico Cavadas, which was, again, I was so happy to see that on Jeff's header there. 5 home runs, 13 RBIs, 6 walks over the weekend at the regional. Set Notre Dame's home run record with 21. Is it too easy to say that he's Schwarbery? Is that too easy a comp? And I know they're not going to take him 4th overall. Is he a nice pick at 3rd or 4th round? And Geoff, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because he's a senior. He was draft eligible in 2020. And we knew that he had this power. Like he was ridiculous down the Cape just in terms of some of the stuff that he was doing. I have some video actually. It's split screen from sort of behind and then open face about 10 feet away from him as he was hitting in the home run derby there. And then I have some game power stuff too. And then I saw him this spring for a couple of games at Boston College when Notre Dame rolled through here. And the power is top of the scale. I mean, it's just easy. He's limited in terms of his defensive profile. I wouldn't hate it in the 4th round. I think there's other guys that would be available in the 3rd. Just depends what he'll sign for. I don't think the number is going to be huge. It wouldn't shock me if a team did that in the 3rd, though. It wouldn't be a complete shock. I mean, because from a data perspective too, like you're talking, really high end exit velocities and a lot of barrels, optimal launch angle. It's all natural. He doesn't have to necessarily sell out for it either. So yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but it's kind of a DH first base profile though. So
the Tigers just have no power in their system. Such a lack of power. Seems like that'd be a guy they could plug in and at least hope on a little bit.
I love Nico.
He's considerably less athletic than Schwarber, I think, right? I mean, Schwarber could at least fake it in the outfield. There's a Seth Beer-ness to Cavadas, I feel like, but
that could be too.
But Seth Beer went in the 1st round, didn't he? Or like,
he may not even be Seth Beer athleticism. I don't think.
Yeah,
okay.
It's more of a.
Beer was young too. Beer was probably like 2 years younger than Cavadas.
Yeah, so, but it's worth a shot there in the mid rounds just to get that power. All right, you.
Well, my bad when you touched on it already, but I'm just going to go with it anyway. I'm not going to reboot here. Nick Madrigal getting hurt. One of my favorite players. I followed him, the year the Tigers were picking 1st overall, and it was kind of before Casey Mize emerged as the odds-on number 1. Nick Madrigal, people were debating him, and then he kind of had a little injury and tailed off a bit his senior year or his final year at Oregon State. But I've been enjoying watching him hit. He's such a different ball player than the 3 true outcome stuff that we see on a daily basis in MLB. He puts the ball in play, makes great contact, doesn't strike out. I think he was hitting 364 for the last month. So it's going to be interesting to see what the White Sox do. Now they're down Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez, and now Madrigal's. They already put him on the 60-day disabled list, so they know he's gone for quite a while. That's how much attrition can they fight off? But the other thing is who's going to challenge them in the division. But because Jose Abreu so far, he's been fine, but he hasn't been MVP level Jose Abreu either. So if another team in the Central, if the Twins actually find themselves, or if the Indians offense can start to hit a little bit, can someone challenge the White Sox now that they've lost another important player? I think it's going to be real interesting to see. My ugly, going a little bit off the beaten path here. I was sitting there watching TV. I think it was Saturday. I'd gotten home from the ball field. MLB Network is showing their baseball movie of the week, and they hit me with Trouble with the Curve. Okay, worst baseball movie ever, considering the cast, mind you. I mean, you got Eastwood, John Goodman, Amy Adams, Timberlake. I mean, all fine actors. Whoever wrote that movie, they should never be allowed in a baseball stadium ever again. They're trading draft picks. They have blind scouts. They have number 1 scouts who've never seen a guy they're going to pick number 1. They have another scout in Timberlake who needs to get the pick right so that he can get an announcer's job, and they're not going to hire him.
No, I think not to
the worst.
Not to interrupt. Yeah, never actually seen that because I've always heard how bad it was. But
Same.
it seems very likely that maybe they weren't baseball fans at all and just wrote it. I think of there's an old after school special PSA thing that I've talked about on the podcast before. I think about gang violence, but it stars the son from Mr. Belvedere, and the gang that's troubling him is all wearing purple and they're doing Broadway style dancing like fights. And it's immediately obvious that whoever was in charge of this was just like a Broadway person or like somebody trying to get like a dance reel going. They're like, all right, whatever, I'll do a gang violence thing. And I think, maybe whoever was writing Trouble with a Curve was just like, I'll write a screenplay, sure.
Well, Clint Eastwood is his character. He's an old aging scout. He's going blind, right? And he hears a hitch in this guy's swing. How do you hear a hitch? He heard it. And then Amy Adams is his daughter. She finds this. She's trying to help him while he's blind. She's a successful lawyer. She probably hasn't played any baseball or softball in 15 years. She puts the gear on and she's catching this kid who is making beds in the hotel. But suddenly he's an all-world pitcher, a lefty throwing 95, and she hasn't played anything in like I say over a decade, and she's handling a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. Yeah, good luck. It was just so ludicrous. I can't believe MLB Network puts it on, but I guess it's got Clint Eastwood, so you throw it out there.
I don't know why they play so many movies. I was like,
I don't either.
Yeah, a dozen movies, and there's like 0 segments about minor league baseball. They could just do like 1 hour a week
or stuff around the prep stuff. They could have anything. They could showcase the game and players at a much younger level, but they choose not to do so.
Yeah. So, all right, Geoff. I don't know if that was enough for you to.
Yes, I'm prepared now. All right. So, my good is this is somewhat relevant to the Tigers, but it's a triumvirate of Wander Franco, Riley Green, and CJ Adams. And when you take a look at players playing in the upper minor leagues that are 21 years of age or younger, there's only 18 of them. That's AA and AAA. And they're the only 20-year-old on this list. And every single one of them ranks within the top 10 in WRC+. Abrams is the lowest number at 121. Riley Green's number is slightly higher at 127, and you have Wander Franco, number 2 on the list behind Gabriel Moreno, all-world catcher and catching prospect. I love Gabriel Moreno. Seen him a few times. He's tremendous behind the plate as well. He's number 1, but Wander Franco is number 2, just 20 years old in AAA. Kind of puts into perspective how good those 3 guys are. And I hear a lot of hype about guys like maybe a Brennan Davis, who's older than these guys. And is also, in AA right now, just gonna hit the upper minors. And it's funny, a lot of people are ranking Davis above Riley Green, and I'm kind of perplexed as to why. Green has shown himself to be a much better athlete than I think we had anticipated coming out of the draft. Can play all over the outfield, does a lot of good things in the bases, takes just great at bats, but he was doing that in, Connecticut at, 18 out of the draft. So that doesn't shock me. More power to come, a lot of projection. So those 3 guys, got to celebrate them a little bit. I think they're really special talents. And one of the fun things to see this year is guys that are 20 years old in the upper minors that are doing some damage and actually, above average players and really strong. Bad. I'm going to go with Jorge Soler. This is the worst full-time regular in baseball right now in terms of guys that are qualified for the batting title. He's a -1 WAR. We're only 50-something games into the season. He's a terrible defender. Offensively, he's been putrid since, that breakout 2019. He's slashing 176, 270, 321. It's just been really, really bad. And he just doesn't add much. Honestly, if this division is up for grabs and, if the Royals actually want to compete, I don't know why they don't go with Edward Olivares every day or some platoon that involves him. He's a really good player, takes great at bats, works deep into counts. He can go the other way. He can make contact. He can turn a ball in the inner half of the plate and tap into some of his pull side power, runs, plays good defense, can play all outfield spots. There's no reason he shouldn't be up and getting more at bats than Soler. I honestly would DFA this guy at this point, though I doubt they do. Everyone still dreams in that power. Seems like it might have been a flash in the pan. As for ugly, I'm going to go with, I guess, one of the more famous international signings from this past year, and one that I think everyone thought would have an immediate impact. That's Cuban signee, Houston Astros prospect Pedro Leon. I always think it's smart to take it slow with some of these, Cuban prospects, especially, that year after they sign. But he's been really bad. He's played some shortstop. I think he's played in the outfield as well. But, overall, he's striking out a ton. I always look, the one number that I do take, and you can tell because I brought it up before, I always try to look at with minor league guys because I have it available to me, is, that contact rate. And if it's just within an acceptable range, or if it's something crazy, his is awful, especially for a guy that's age appropriate for that level. 60%. He's striking out a ton, a lot of swing and miss. And he's been passive. I've watched a few of those games because they have some interesting pitchers on Corpus Christi, and they face some guys down there, in AA South that are pretty interesting. So I've been staying on top of it. Plus, I write up, AA and AAA every single night of the week for Prospects Live and our daily sheets. So yeah, he's somebody that outside of a couple of games this week, I think he had a big game on Tuesday, and then I think I had 4 walks last night, and that's honestly the best stretch that he's had. He's been pretty bad. I wouldn't completely write it off, but I think sort of the funniest thing with Pedro Leon is he's actually not even, at least statistically, the best Cuban signing from this year on Corpus Christi. That actually belongs to a player by the name of Norel Gonzalez. He's 27 years old. He's like a first base only type, but spent 5 years in the professional leagues in Cuba. Always hit for really high average, really high on base percentage, and they say that he has a fair amount of power. He's showing that so far. 7 homers. Like I said, he's a little bit older, but I think I'll write it off because he is a new import. He's new to the United States. It's his first time playing professional baseball in the United States, and he's already in the upper minors, and he's hitting. So might be a guy that, might be on the fringes and maybe even see some time if there's some injuries up in Houston. But I thought that was pretty ugly, and just try to give you some silver lining that maybe they just they hyped up the wrong guy.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe it's not any more than any other prospect phylum, but it does seem like the Cuban imports have such a high rate of boomer bust. Exactly. It's like your Victor Mesa or your Jose.
Well, your Victor Mesa. Victor might be good.
Yeah, which was not expected at the time, right? He was like, yeah, he's the throwing. Yeah. So, yeah, and then the Gurriels, I mean, they've both been pretty good, but the younger one wasn't as highly thought of, I thought, at first, but he's been better than I expected. So, yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, and I by the way, I love those daily sheets are just fantastic. Like, they're super informative, and they're also very funny and entertaining. I don't know how you guys do it, because it takes me like 8 hours to do the weekly Tigers minor league update where I'm checking all the stats, and it's like I'm updating my spreadsheets, and I'm like, it takes forever. So yeah, those are great.
I go through and I try to watch as many games as I can. And a lot of what I do is there's a lot of players obviously in AA and AAA that I've seen just from having covered that, and that's what I have locally to me with the Eastern League and what is it? AA Northeast, AA. Yeah, I think it's AA Northeast, and then it's
Southwest
AAA,
Division,
AAA Eastern Northeast Division. So like that's what I have now. So I'm somewhat familiar with these teams.
Yeah.
And, just having covered prospects for a million years. I mean, even the guys that are in AAA and kind of old now, I covered in the draft at one point. So it's all a long cycle that just sort of feeds to a certain point. So a lot of it's jokes, scooping around, looking at some numbers, looking at some trends, trying to make sure that, everyone's just informed about who's doing what. You still miss a few, but I don't think I've ever been as informed as I've been just writing it up every day, as opposed to just kind of checking it and watching some games. Now I have that plus everything else. And I do 2 levels. AAA is so boring to write up though, dude. Oh my God. I just like fly through it, and then I'm like happy once it gets to AA, and I enjoy writing up AA, which is why I'll go a little deeper on those guys. So yeah. And I just try to, my phone, MLB TV, I just try to watch as many starting pitchers as possible, so I know what they're throwing. Like, I keep on missing Odalve Javier from the Braves, and there's really nothing out there publicly. Obviously, I don't see a lot of Braves prospects being in the Northeast, and he just shoves every time he's out there. Like he had like 13 looking strikes last night and 12 swinging in like 5 or 6 innings, and he only gave up 1 hit. And it seems like he does that every time. So I try to go in and like watch these guys, or go back and watch these guys and just, see what they're actually throwing. I'll actually listen to the announcers in minor league games, because the good ones will actually give you velocity. Shout out to all minor league announcers that actually give you velocity when there's no gun on the screen. That's huge. But yeah, so it's been a lot of fun to write. Plus Matt and Reese. So we got a lot of interesting perspectives just in the mix.
Yeah, as I said, they're just I find them super entertaining, and it's way into like it pleases me a great deal to read those. So I appreciate you guys doing them. Chip wanted us to have a freestyle battle. I don't think we're not going to do that.
No.
But I don't know. Do you want to compare teams to late '90s underground hip hop groups?
We can do that if you want. Yeah.
No.
Let's do it.
Who's J Zone?
Who's J Zone? Oh,
yeah,
man. Oh man, I love that. Right, Old Maid Billionaires, baby. I saw J Zone in concert a bunch in college.
Nice.
I was in a rap group that opened for J Zone, which is also awesome and hilarious. He's an interesting character. I don't think I'd hang out with him with my family.
Well, what's interesting is there was a documentary that came out a couple years ago. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's about like underground rappers who kind of quit and tried to go get real jobs, or like, living the life. And one of them is J Zone, and he's just down in the basement, like playing drums and making beats and stuff. And it's just interesting to see that. But
I'll have to find that like tonight and like watch it like right now. I haven't even.
I'll see if I could find that.
I haven't even thought about it in so long. But J Zone would be kind of funny. So who would be J Zone? It would have to be somebody who's like kind of off the wall, but fun, right?
Yeah. But not a lot of tapes. Yeah, that's I know it's tough.
The White Sox. I think the White Sox are J Zone because they kind of don't make sense. Like they're contradictory in like the terms of like who they are, and I think he always kind of had that going. There was like some irony to like everything that he did, and just the fact they have this young, really fun team that's wild and like likes to party and have a good time, and then you got Tony La Russa as their manager, and it just seems like something that would be like the concept of like a J Zone album, like his like angry neighbor or like angry like whatever, like somewhat rigid girlfriend versus like him and his like hip hop lifestyle. Seems like something J Zone would write. So there you go.
That's it's tremendous for doing that on the fly. I think Raj sent me a song today. It was is it a Doom song produced by Edon? And I was like, oh, Edon. All right. So Edon's
was the one with old Droog?
Yep.
That's a banger. Yeah.
Edon is the Rays. I think they just are hiding in the basement, perfecting their craft, and then coming out every now and then, like, hey, what happened here? Why are they super technically proficient?
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, anyway, absolutely.
I think we're confusing you and every other listener. So
it's all good. Fascinating.
No, I appreciate you coming on with us, Geoff.
That's what, man.
What else do you want to pump out for Prospects Live? I mean, we talked. There's so much good stuff over there, but I don't know if you got anything special coming up.
Yeah, so we have the live mock drafts. We're doing that again. Obviously last year it was staggered. The draft's a little bit later than it was last year, and people have something to do now. So we weren't like, hey, no one's doing anything on May 1st. Let's do a big mock draft. That's going to be on the 25th. So I think it's 2 weeks from Friday.
Awesome.
And same deal, 30 teams all the way through. Well, actually 29 because the Astros don't have the pick in the first 63. We are going to do the 2 comp rounds. We're going to do the first and the second round. So you're going to get a lot of interesting picks, and we'll have a lot of guys like Brian Sikowski, Vinny Severino, Burke Granger, of course, Nick Valeris, and numerous other, names that, they're going to be involved, and as well as, some folks internally from Prospects Live. They're going to be picking from teams. So I always think it's good to get a bunch of different people out there, really interesting perspectives, and we'll have graphics, the whole 9 ready to go. And it's almost like a really fun kind of, I don't know, cosplay of the MLB draft.
I was part of the Tigers team for that last year, and it was really, really fun. I don't remember who showed up with a shirt off later in the draft, but
Kyle Reese, Cardinals guy. He's back.
Nice.
We got to bring him back for the entertainment factor. He's like the Flavor Flav of the group. We talk serious issues like Chuck D, and then we bring in Flavor Flav.
There you go. You got to have the hype man. Yeah. No, what's funny is it. I don't know if this is it probably doesn't play like this in a real draft room, but I remember I was part of the team with Keenan was running the team. Keenan from Tigers, and he also brought on Jay Markle, and I was there too. And it was like we made the first pick as a group. It was Torkelson, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we kind of gave one to everybody else. And at the end, I really wanted to take Hudson Haskin with it would have been like the 75th pick or something like that. But I knew that Jay Markle really wanted Blake Dunn. I think a center fielder from Western Michigan. Yeah, who didn't end up getting drafted last year. So I was like, I don't want to.
He got hurt in his first swing of the season this year too.
Oh, I was wondering what happened to him. Yeah. So, and I was like, I don't want to take this other center fielder because I feel like it'll be a big middle finger to him. And then Haskin ended up going 36th or whatever. So
Baltimore had a first round grade on Haskin actually.
I mean, it's funky looking, but the tools were really interesting. That's what interested me, at least.
Young for the draft, Northeast kid, right? That played in a mid-major. So,
yeah, he's from Connecticut, same school as George Springer, I think.
Yeah, Avon Old Farms and Hockey Hall of Famer Brian Leach.
That's right. Yes.
And Ryan Cusick.
Oh, well, there you go. That's it. Was it in your mock? I saw some mock where he was going to the Tigers, and
yeah, it is
32.
Yeah.
Nice. No, so I ended up taking Ricky Tiedemann.
Not bad.
I enjoyed him, and then when I did a whole mock draft myself for the Tigers minor league report last year, just to be dumb, nobody cared. But I did all 150 picks or whatever, and looking up Ricky Tiedemann, I found all these videos of his older brother dressed up like Joe Exotic, shooting guns and stuff. All right, well, let's get this guy in the system, have some fun with him. But in any event. Too many side tracks, but I'm looking forward to that. That was a really cool event and very awesome, and everybody should check it out this year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tigers SRD. We'll be back next week with Rogelio and the usual nonsense that we do, and make sure to like us and all that good stuff on your various podcast platforms. And we'll check you out next week. Thanks a lot.